Hey, Behave listeners, producer Levi here. We are, as always, delighted to have you listening. Just wanted to let you know that this episode of Behave was recorded before the murder of George Floyd, so we are not discussing it in the episode. We do have an episode responding to the murder of George Floyd, and you can find that on our podcast feed. Thanks for listening.
I'm Alfonso Winker.
And I'm Trina Olson. And together, we're the co-founders of Team Dynamics.
And this is Behave.
Welcome back to another episode of Behave. Hi, Alfonso.
Hi, Trina.
It's good to see you and hear you.
It's good to see you and hear you as well. I'm glad that we did our workaround and that we're recording on Zoom so we can have a little bit of face energy while we record.
Yeah, face energy. That's nice. It's all you coined a new term earlier this week too, and you said you were going to take hand notes. And because you didn't want to be on Zoom and clicky clacking at the same time on your computer.
Yes.
Like, hand notes. Yes, let's call them that. Well, Alfonso, I wanted this to be one of the episodes where I interview you and ask a couple questions because, unsurprisingly, all of our clients at the exact same time, alongside Team Dynamics as well, are navigating whatever is about to be next in this COVID-19 global pandemic time. So thinking about the economic and the physical impact, the fact that different states, different counties, different companies are making some different choices, and in any parts of sort of reopening or being physically back together. We also know that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way. There might be a spike in infections, and then folks might need to sort of hunker back down into stay at home. So we're not sure, but we do know that we have more clarity about a couple things. And the first thing I think we have clarity about is until there is a widely available vaccine that works, there's no such thing as a day when we all get to just go back to how it used to be. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, and I don't know if there will ever be how it used to be, because I think we're eager for newness and revolution.
100%. So this isn't about making what was before small. And we really want to acknowledge that there is grief associated with the new world we're living in. And we want to acknowledge we have that too. There is dissonance and a duality to, there's stuff I miss. There's stuff I'm going to keep missing. And on my good days when I'm well and I've slept and I'm feeling grounded and connected, I do see some opportunities in sort of this forced reset. And so I think I just want to acknowledge that we're all holding that too. It is neither all doom and gloom nor all sunshine and rainbows. It's a mix. When we think about shifting in the next right, most strategic, science-informed, health-focused way, some of what is around the corner includes some people physically going back to some places. It might be less people, the desks might be farther apart. It might only be that there are certain people in certain departments that need to go in because they physically have to touch equipment or be near certain things. Alfonso, my first question to you is how you think workplaces and workforces should deal with the truth that some people are loving working from home. Some people are hating working from home. And a lot of people are in the middle. So if that truth is true, how do we move into that next shift where some people might be in person, some people might be at home, or it might be part of a shift to fully digital? How on earth do you navigate that? How do you make people happy? How do you make sure people are doing their jobs and doing them well?
It will come as no surprise to you or to you listening that my answer begins with self-awareness.
Yes, I should have guessed. I didn't think ahead, and had I? Yes. Yeah.
So
why is that always your answer?
That is always my answer, because self-awareness is where we should always start if we're thinking about culture, if we're thinking about identity, if we're thinking about workplace behavior. Self-awareness is where we begin and end always. So I think folks should begin by asking themselves, do I love, do I hate, or am I in the middle when it comes to working from home? So if the reality is we know different people on different days are having a different feeling, try to think about your experience in aggregate. So for you, how are you feeling about working from home and all of what it means? So I'm not even going to pepper in what some of those aspects might be, but for you, how are you feeling about working from home? Then I would say, what stories are you telling yourself about how it feels for the other people on your team? And then what have you decided that means for the future of your work? And have you tested that story with anybody else? So have you made up a whole sort of opinion and projected future before you've checked in with other folks? I would venture to guess that any of us, when we stop and sit still and take a few deep breaths, we could come up with some days we've loved working from home, some days we've hated working from home, and some days where we were in the middle that the day wouldn't have been better or worse, so we could have gone either way. So once I've been able to figure out what's coming up for me around my relationship to working from home, then I can start getting curious with other folks. So rather than saying, I'm really hating working from home, pretty sure everybody's feeling like that, and I bet we can't all wait to get back to the office. Then go to curiosity for other people. What is it like for you? Let me tell you a little bit about what it's like for me. My way and your way can be different. We don't have to have one way or the other be different. And then have a conversation as a team. What are our goals? What is it that would be improved by some of us working from home? What would be improved by some of us being in person more? And can we come up with some plans or protocols for different scenarios? So rather than saying the pendulum swung from we had an arbitrary everyone must be here rule to the government and science told us we needed to all be at home. Now, how can we right size the truth about what is really needed? And then have a conversation about what does it look like when even within that container, different people might need different things. And have we decided that that is disruptive? Or have we decided, actually, we've built a really great flexibility muscle in this time. And so even within a new container where we say some of what we're going to do, it just would be better if we could be together sometimes. And some of what we need to do seems like a lot of us got a lot of it done while we were at home. So here's some of the plans or protocols or scenarios where we would be together or apart. And then within that, what's the range of flexibility? So it actually takes us back to some of our conversations about culture. So what does it mean when we're together or apart? And then when do we decide it's okay or not okay to be together or apart? So instead of holding up away from your team, deciding because you felt that day, the day you're writing the new plan, a certain way about home or not home, and then broadcasting and projecting that to people, get curious with them about what it's felt like and what some sort of hybrid model would look like.
Yeah, thank you for all those different ways to look at it, because I do think this has been a profoundly disorienting time for workers when a whole lot of us thought that certain things were impossible to do from far away. How do you invite people to sort of do self-awareness work so that they can get to more options rather than hunker down into singular ways of being?
I think when we are feeling attached to or clinging to a particular way of being, it's important to ask ourselves if we are protecting or grieving something. So have we decided that if we have some sort of hybrid plan or flexibility, that I might lose something? So that's the sort of protection side. Or is the truth of what's actually going on behind my claiming I'm just a certain way and it has to be a certain way, is the fact that maybe I really miss how energizing it is to talk to people while we make our coffee in the morning. So if you find yourself clinging to a way of being, I would ask yourself, well, when did you learn that? Who did you learn it from? When did it become important? And are you trying to protect part of it? Or are you grieving a loss? And can you name that for folks? So rather than saying, I am this way, and we can't do this new or next thing, say, I'm really missing making coffee together in the mornings. Is there a way that we can replicate that in the next thing we're going to do? Or I'm afraid that I'm going to lose the collegial time and only focus on tasks. How can we fold that into how we're going to be?
Yeah, there's all this research, and obviously research is being done right now on how workplaces and workers are being impacted. And there's always been this difference between being near each other and being in relationship. It's not the same thing. We may or may not be physically near each other, and we may or may not be in relationship. And so the workplace research really shows that it's about depth of connection is how people feel connected to their work, their colleagues, and their desire to stay at an organization. It really impacts relationships at work, really impact retention rates. So even what you were saying, maybe it's not, so let's make coffee with our cameras on. And maybe it is, but to be able to say, so I'm missing that, getting to hear about each other's lives, or getting to sort of warm up or have energizing music, or to be standing up instead of sitting. Like, what are all the elements of that coffee making ritual that maybe really is about making coffee, and maybe it's about how we're doing relationship together.
Right.
I have a couple rapid fire questions because I think they are on a lot of people's hearts and minds. How do you navigate how different people are asking for tech help differently? So let's say they're one of the people who have been asked to really stay at home until the fall or the winter, or being asked to consider whether they can permanently work not in a physical office space. We've heard a little bit about a lot of great IT departments making offerings, because we know that we start with different technology, if any, in our own homes. So the idea of not having the same kinds of workstations or what we need available. How are different people asking differently? How is that predictable? And how can folks help?
Yeah, I'll make an offer on that front. I think it's predictable in so many workplaces that when we make an offer, that white folks, cisgender folks, straight folks, men are likely to say, hey, I'll take some of that resource you're offering. And it is likely that women, people of color, LGBTQ people, people living with a disability are likely to say, well, I remember the last time I said I'll take some of those resources, and then I got in trouble, or then I got shamed, or then or got talked to about how I'm problematic or difficult or a drain on resources or a special case. And so
right, I felt high maintenance, or somebody told me what I needed was expensive, and then I felt bad. Yeah.
Right. Or I watched other people like me not take it. So then I thought, oh, we're not supposed to take that resource. So it's important as you're offering different resources to folks to say, and we know that it's predictable that fill in the blank, whatever your mix is, whatever the differences making a difference are. We know it's predictable that marginalized communities often are told there's a resource available, but it's not for you. We mean it. These resources are for everybody, and we're not going to do equality. Everyone's not getting one because everyone doesn't need one. We need to hear from folks who need some.
Right. Like I don't need a printer because we do things on sort of Dropbox, and my phone has the capacity to scan and take photos of things, but I did need this microphone so that people could hear us on the podcast. Right. So it's even just sort of those tactical reminders that it's not one size fits all in these moments.
Next one. I'm ready.
How do we navigate knowing so much about each other that we didn't know before moving into the new time? So maybe I've seen people's cats and kids and spouses, and I know what their apartment looks like. And now I know that they have housemates, and I didn't know that before. Or I know they live in an apartment and it looks really different than mine. How do we be good stewards of this new information we have?
So pause and consider all of the things that you've learned about your colleagues. What have you decided that any of that information means? And what have you decided any of that information means about that person and about your relationship? And again, coming back to, have you checked that assumption with them? I would also invite folks to have a conversation about what will be the same and different now that we know different things about each other, and we're going to see each other again potentially, or interact again potentially in a physical shared space. So for example, I might now know that you feed a young person that lives with you every day at 11:30. I might decide it would be cute, funny, or interesting, Trina, to stop by your desk and say, it's 11:30, who's feeding that kid? And that may or may not be any of my business. You may or may not want to talk about that. And that might leave you wondering why I felt compelled to say that. Why is it relevant to the conversation right now? And so we want folks to take stock of the new information that you have and decide together what's useful and relevant to be discussed, to be leveraged, and to not jump to conclusions or decisions about what you get to do at that person with the information that you've learned because of circumstance.
Right. I think this idea that we've all been forced into a level of intimacy and vulnerability isn't a bad thing. It is if it goes sort of unawares or unchecked, that now we just have all these goodies. So thank you for naming that. And I think even, on our team, we're navigating, we thought we knew each other pretty well. We know each other even better, or we know different things about each other. And so what does that mean about assumptions we're going to make about how we work together? So I've got a question about consent and self-determination.
Ooh, my favorite.
It's a juicy one. So one of the things that is really complex about how we are experiencing this pandemic is that different people are making different choices about what feels and doesn't feel safe to them. We also are reminded that different people are in different bodies. So whether folks are immunocompromised, whether folks live with somebody who has a pre-existing condition, how close people are to folks in that 60 plus age range, right? Our bodies interact with other people. Our bodies also have sort of their own things going on. And so as we're navigating and negotiating this new hybrid future, how do we actually make sure that we're not forcing people to do something that is outside of their boundaries of what they know would keep them feeling safe psychologically and physically? And a little footnote, there might be new things about people's physical health that we really never knew before, that folks felt like they needed to disclose to HR or their supervisor to understand why they might be the one of the people who hangs back from in-person for a while. So how do we navigate sort of the reality where we might be saying, and we might even be meaning, everybody gets to decide for themselves, or you really can make a choice that feels good for you, but what if you're the weirdo in your department that is making a different choice than everybody else? How do we really do consent and self-determination when the actual ways we keep ourselves healthy is different based on the kind of bodies we're in?
So I would think of a couple of things that would be helpful for workplaces. One is coming up with a menu of options. So helping folks understand what the new pattern options are, what they mean, and when they're okay and when they're not okay. So for how many days, for what length of time, for how many hours a day, through what vehicles. So at your home, from a coffee shop, a co-working space, the office, a boardroom. So all those different locations, where would someone be? And by what means are they engaging? Zoom, Google Hangout, email, phone, Slack. When are those things okay and not okay? And then with what kind of frequency? So really doing a map of, given what we're going to be working on next, what's the different menu of options? I don't know what your whole sort of Venn diagram of places and communication vehicles are, but make that map. And then 2, have a conversation about what your group agreements or protocols are around discussing the choices that people make. So are we going to be people who check in and name what we're going to be doing in the next 24 hours? Are we going to be people who, well, when it's time for, let's say, example, the meeting, have we decided it's okay if one person shows up and is sitting alone in a conference room and then they see 12 other people on Zoom? And have we decided how we want to talk about, like, oh, I'm really bummed out that I'm the only person here. I was excited to see people today, but I forgot to ask, is anyone going to be in person because I'm interested in interaction? So rather than waiting and being surprised or realizing, oh, we made this option available and one of 15 people is leveraging the option, talk about what you want to do when there's some sort of anomaly or distinct choice being made, so that when people pick something from the menu you agreed on, they don't feel like they're getting shamed or in trouble for the menu item that they pick.
I love that. Here's the last question. It's a softball because it's one of the things you've been talking about a lot, because it's a great accidental outcome for workplace culture of this pandemic. Why haven't we ever wanted people to go to work sick? And why are we excited that this might make people think differently about working well ill?
So sick people with bacterial infections or viruses give those to other people and make more people sick.
I love that you leaned into your microphone. For
It's like,
you really mean it. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
so I don't want people near me who are coughing and sneezing ever. And in a time when we don't have a treatment or a vaccine for a virus that spreads pretty rapidly and that we have a lot of questions about, I also don't want you there either. So don't be a hero and don't succumb to the white dominant capitalism narrative that you are what you produce, and stay home. The other thing is you are working near people who might have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, some other chronic illness, HIV/AIDS, some other kind of immunocompromised situation, and you don't know. So now you've decided for them what kind of health environment they're going to be around. So if we're the only adults that we're in control of, stay home if you can. It's not worth it to get other people sick. And it's not even important that you know all the different diagnoses that your colleagues have. Assume many have those. And if you're the kind of person that would say, I would never want to kill someone accidentally, then stay home and don't cough on people. Then you won't accidentally kill people.
Thank you for naming that. We know it can sound or land as a little over the top, but it's true. And unfortunately, there has been this pattern for a long time that people should work while really ill. And the truth is their work is compromised. Their workers are compromised. And you can get back to work so much faster if you actually take care of yourself and get the health needs met that you need. We acknowledge this entire time, right, that there are a whole lot of folks around the globe that don't have access to work right now. And we do work with some people in essential services. We know that there are a whole lot of folks in the service industry, service sector, folks who either economically just cannot not work right now, or are parts of industries where they're really being asked to keep working regardless. And so we recognize that sick days, sick time, vacation days, flexibility, that is all really up in the air right now. And it's one of the reasons we talk incessantly about being embodied leaders. The healthier our workforce is, the better work they produce. It's just true. So think about it sort of from that direction. So there will be a whole lot more as people are practicing, discovering, learning, making mistakes, evaluating as we go, trying again. I think the through lines, Alfonso, that I was really hearing from you are that self-awareness are key and that we are not practiced at this pivot or this time. So practice, choose to take the time and make the time to do the self-awareness work to say, okay, what am I keeping? What am I tossing? What am I doing differently? And that self-awareness work to catch ourselves that when we've decided our experience is everybody else's experience. So those sort of projection problems that we can have. I'm hearing you say that you have a lot of hope and excitement about options and opportunities, and that it is really possible to hold that with the grief and the sadness we have about missing each other and about knowing things aren't going to be the way they were before. So that dissonance is real. We don't have to Pollyanna anything, and we also don't have to doom and gloom everything. We're somewhere in between from day in and day out. So for our listeners who may be running out of things to listen to or watch, Alfonso, as we close out today, what have you been listening to that has been keeping you motivated, excited, bringing you joy, bringing you calm? What's been on your playlist or in your YouTube videos?
I have been listening to a lot of gay people playing piano and singing on the internet. So I think I've shared this before, but if you are into gay people singing songs from Disney, songs from musicals, cover songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you should follow Virtual Piano Bar. So every day, Monday through Friday, they have a happy hour show at 5 o'clock Central. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have a show at 6 o'clock Central. They have a themed show on Friday nights. They have a late night, sort of more sassy show on Saturday nights. And then on Wednesdays at, I think, noon, they have a children's show. So check out Virtual Piano Bar on Facebook, and they go live a bunch of times every week.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There's been two things that I've been hooking into. So the first is I've been doing some 20 to 30-minute online dance classes. There are all sorts of different people who are teaching just like short routines. So I'll say, I've learned a little samba. I've learned a little, was it foxtrot? Was it the jive? It was jumpy is the point. So to sort of shake my wiggles out at the end of the day and to make some kind of indication that my workday is over and the rest of my life is starting, I pop on something to dance to. There's also a song that Tyree and I were sharing with each other this morning, which is Nina Cried Power by the artist, writer, and musician Hozier, Hozier. He's an Irish musician. And the guest version that is live with and featuring Mavis Staples should not be missed.
Yes. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. Please read the fine print of the new executive orders. If you live in Minnesota, it demands that workers who can work from home continue to work from home. Check us out on Twitter at Behave Podcast. Send us an email, team@teamdynamicsmn.com, and make good choices.